Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Jones, and I am one of the hosts of today's CFIB webinar on best practices for successful hiring. Welcome back if you're a regular, and if this is your first time joining us for a webinar, welcome, and we're excited about today's topic. I've got some great people co-hosting with me, and I'm going to introduce them in a minute. But first, just a little bit of housekeeping. You will notice that we have both a chat function and a Q&A function, a little button at the bottom of your screen. And so for chat, that is mainly discussion amongst yourselves, and we'll monitor it a little bit. And if there are questions that pop up, we'll try and answer them there. But if you have questions for our panelists, the best place to put them is in the Q&A, and then we'll definitely see them. And I've got some folks in the background as well who are going to be helping to answer your questions. And of course, we'll take some of them live as well. And so why don't we move to, also Alexa has just reminded me that the presentation is in the chat function. So you can download the presentation in the chat function if you would like. We will also be emailing you a copy of the webinar deck, as well as the recording, the recording of the webinar as well. So don't feel like you have to, be frantically scribbling down the, what's on the slides. Multiple ways we'll get them to you. And if you miss all of those, you can always call us and we'll send you a copy. So no worries about getting the deck. We will make sure you get a copy one way or another. Okay, so with that, let me introduce my presenters. So some of you who have been with us for a number of webinars will know Jocelyn, as she often joins us, and she's our Senior Manager of Business Resources but she takes national cases, and also she's based in Atlantic Canada. So she does a lot of work in Atlantic Canada. Really pleased to introduce for the first time Tricia, who is another one of our business advisors. So she's going to help out today. And Midori is with us. And Midori is our own recruiter, director of our talent acquisition. So she's got some great insights, as well as we're also struggling with labor shortages. So we're going to share all the good stuff, all our best tips as well. So today's agenda, if we go to the next slide, and while I'm walking through the agenda, if everyone could just put in the chat where you're coming to. I always love, we've got members coast to coast to coast. And so please let us know where you're coming from, and if you want, what industry you're in. But see, I always love this part. I know I do it every webinar, but I just love seeing Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Winnipeg, Regina. We've got members from all over the place. And that is really the strength of, we've got strength in numbers at CFIB, and that is how we do our fantastic advocacy on your behalf. So for the agenda, we've got the hiring journey. So we're going to walk you all the way through the hiring journey. This webinar is really giving you the forest, and we're thinking about doing some webinars that dive into the trees. So I'm going to ask you at the very end if you'd like webinars that are specifically focused on, for example, how to post a job and sell it, or making a great job offer, or the temporary foreign worker program. But for this webinar, we're going to kind of cover the whole territory and give you a sense of the forest and some tips for each part of the hiring practice, and then of course get to as many of your questions as possible. We always like to have a little bit of humor and make it real. So on the next slide, you'll see, I love this, the whole world is short-staffed. Be kind to those who showed up. You're seeing more signs like this as people are struggling with labor shortages, and we know it's affecting businesses in having to reduce hours in some cases, and staff who are there are coping with higher volumes. And then of course, just the staff needed. We got a great question pre-webinar. We asked you if you have any questions, and Cheryl said, what's going on? Where the heck are all the workers? And Cheryl, to answer your question, there are two big forces at work here. One is demographics. So we've been hearing for the last 10 or 15 years, oh, the boomers are going to retire, and that's going to be a problem. I think that's really hitting us now. There's a demographic shift, and the baby boom generation in Canada, of all of the developed countries, the baby boomer in generation in Canada, it was the biggest kind of spike in population. So Canada has, we've been witnessing that for a while, but that's part of it. The second part of it is COVID disrupted things in very weird ways. So people who were doing certain jobs moved on to other jobs. And so if you were a restaurant server, for example, and there's no work for you, you may have moved to another industry and you're not coming back. So we're hearing a lot of that. This is affecting airport security in a big way. So you may have noticed if you've flown lately that the security lineups are big. Well, I was talking to some of the folks there and they're like, yeah, it's just we had people doing security and they left and they're not coming back. And we've got to now train people up. So there's also some of that happening, but definitely a challenge. If we go to the next slide, one of the key themes that we're going to talk about today is the dynamics in the labor force. Have we been through more change in the last 2 years than we've been through in the last, any number of decades? And the labor market dynamics are very different today than they were even 2 years ago. So this idea of based on your, that you as the employer are sort of, can choose and interview, and you've got 20 candidates to choose from, and which one do you, best fits your needs, and that you are really the one doing the interviewing is kind of flipped on its head a little bit now, and the employees have a lot of say and what they're interested in. They are interviewing you more than ever, certainly more than was the case even just 2 years ago or 5 years ago, definitely from 10 years ago. And that means there has to be a little bit of a shift in the mindset. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. I always like to share some of our data because our data is your data. You're the ones that give us this data. And one of the things we track is on something called our monthly business barometer, where we look at business conditions and business optimism, is what are the factors that are limiting your ability to grow your business. And you can see from this graph that shortage of skilled labor and shortage of unskilled or semi-skilled labor, those are the two things, those are right at the top of the list. And you can see from the graph below, you don't have to look at all the fine print there. The only thing I want you to look at is the line. And what the line is showing you basically is that this problem has hit a high water mark. So if you're feeling what's going on, yes, something's going on, and no, you are not alone. We don't put this up to discourage you, but just to say that it is very real, and the need to think differently in order to be competitive when it comes to hiring staff is also very real. Thinking outside of the box and getting a lot more creative. And we've got some great tips to help you with that. So don't let that be discouraging. But I wanted to ask a quick poll question right now, because although our tips, I think, are relevant, whether you're looking for entry level or kind of mid-level or skilled labor, there are some differences, and we're curious about our audience and which jobs you're struggling to fill, whether that's that, just very entry level, or you're looking for a little bit of experience, or you really are wanting, some highly skilled labor that is specific. So we'll just wait for a moment while that poll comes up. I'll give you a second to answer that. Okay, great. So we've got the mid, so it's like our data is showing on this graph that it is the mid-level and the skilled that is more than the entry level. We're going to speak to all three. There's some differences, obviously, but some things that are common themes that you can use no matter where you are. I'm going to turn it over to Jocelyn to take us on the next slide through the hiring journey. Also, you may have some great tips for each other, so feel free to put that in the chat. One of the great things about this is it's a community where we can share our best practices and our best thinking, and we certainly don't have all the answers, and many of our answers come from you anyway, as you know. And I'm going to encourage my colleagues to just pop up at any time when they've got things to add along these little bus stops we've got, I guess, on the road. And I'll turn it over to Jocelyn.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So today we're going to think about the process of hiring as a journey. So with any good journey, you need to have a good map. And we're hoping that the information in this webinar will serve as a guide to help you with the process. Of course, there are some key pit stops along the way. And today we're going to stop at how to post your job and sell it, interviewing best practices, how to make the job offer, and onboarding new employees. And interestingly enough, you might see that we have a pit stop at the end for retention, but I want you to start thinking about retention as something that actually starts from the first moment you start your hiring plan. We actually strongly believe that employee retention is part of fostering a transparent and clear relationship from the start. So with any journey, little planning goes a long way. We're going to spend some time talking about how to post your job and sell your vacancy. So if we want to move to the next slide, there are a few key things that you can do in order to help maximize your job posting. And we think that the first thing that you need to do is write a great job description. So the job description is not the same thing as a job ad. We are going to speak on that in a moment. But a job description is actually, in plain language, the responsibilities and requirements of the job that you want to fill. And this probably has more details than actually appears in a job ad. And this is going to list the core values that you might want an employee to have, the employee tasks, requirements, working conditions, and even the physical requirements of the job. And that can be really important down the road if there's a workers' compensation claim. A job description will not only help you clearly communicate the job to the applicants, so they have a clear understanding of their duties, but it's also going to help you focus in on what are your must-haves and your nice-to-haves when hiring. So I noticed a lot of you are hiring mid to skilled level workers. So again, this is something where if you know what is a must-have versus nice-to-have can help. Business resources, we actually say the majority of all disciplinary issues comes from a misunderstanding of expectations. So a job description, a great base document for communication with your employees. And great news, we are actually offering our members a job description template that you can download and customize for your own use. So when you get a recording of this webinar, we're going to attach all of these documents, or you can go into the member portal and download them for yourself. So down the road, job description can become the basis of performance management as well. So that way, if things go sideways, you can always point back to what the expectations have always been. So now we can talk a little bit about the job ad. And this is actually a really unique opportunity to sell your company. And this is the thing that has had a lot of changes in the last couple of years. And we want you to think about your vacancy as a product that you're selling. And there's lots of different ways to post job ads. It's not necessarily the classifieds in the newspaper anymore. And in this market, you really have to catch some attention. So I'm going to show you some cute ones that we found that are really unique. So the first one is actually from Instagram. And if you look at it, this one here is called Grizzly's Grill. And there's quite some silly and excited young people. And this job ad is on Instagram. And this employer did a really good job of focusing in on where the types of employees they would want to hire are, which is social media. And it says, hey, we want someone who's fun and who's creative, but also hardworking. So I thought that one was kind of cute. The next one is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's looking for computer engineers. And it says, call this phone number and a tear off, which is really simple. But if you look at the phone number, it's actually a really complicated math equation. So I guess if you can answer the math equation, then I guess maybe you qualify for the job. It's pretty cute, right? But one of the best job ads that I've recently seen, and it's very unique to what we have been doing in the past, was one of our own job ads. And I'm actually going to get Midori to come up and talk to us about how CFIB has changed their approach to recruiting in the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Jocelyn. Well, we at CFIB, we've been, I would say, looking at different ways to cope up in terms of the challenging market that we have right now. And we had to really switch gear, I would say, change a little bit of what we've been doing in the past, think outside the box, as Laura mentioned earlier on. We really had to think outside the box where actually to reach candidate and how to reach candidate. So as you could see in this job ad, we wrote a little bit of note of a text, I would say, in giving the opportunity to the candidate to decide how they want to work. As you probably know yourself, candidates right now are deciding on where they want to work, and do they want to flex time, they would want a hybrid approach in terms of their work, they would like to have a remote. So this is helping us to actually gauge candidates in a different way. So we also been trying recently using Canva. We use Canva in terms of doing ads and posters so that we can post on social media. Having said that, we did some work as well in terms of deciding where are the candidates and who are our prospective candidates. We know the baby boomers are exiting the workforce. We know there's a lot of shift in terms of a gig economy as well, where candidates are shifting towards a gig economy. And at this point, we felt we have a lot of millennial coming to the workforce. We have the Gen Z actually coming to the workforce as well. So we decided to make sure that we adapt to their kind of reality, to go where actually they are looking for jobs. So kind of tailoring made our ads so that they can reach out to different audiences could be on LinkedIn, could be on Facebook, and different social media outlet as well. And so that's a little bit about in terms of what we do in terms of the ad.
Dory, one thing I wanted to ask you, because we got a number of questions about this pre-webinar, is where is the best free place to post ads? And I know you have to think about your audience as well, like who are you trying to hire and where are they? I mean, that's very important. But in general, where would you say, what are the best places to post for free ads?
So free ads indeed has, I think it's the best in terms of free ads. And it's very easy and very easy to follow in terms of posting. They have actually on Indeed site as well, they have step-to-step on how to post the ad. So it's very easy where to post the ad. And there are a lot of different websites as well that provide kind of, it's probably paid after some time, but you could get a free ads for the first time user. So for instance, ZipRecruiter has a kind of a promos going all the time for you to try. I know there's one in Toronto, which is Toronto Jobs.ca, give you kind of a first trial for free. So these are different places where you can actually post, but definitely some of them has kind of paid memberships after that.
Okay, so but Indeed is INDEED, Indeed is the one, and maybe we can post that in. Now, Kim is saying Indeed is not free in my experience, so maybe you want to clarify.
That's a good question, and yes, it is free and not free as well, in the sense that if you have a volume in terms of jobs that are coming up, for instance, if you're posting a lot of jobs frequently, then they will be definitely, it's free to post. However, your ad may not be on the first page when you're posting the ad. After, with the volume of ads going on, your ads may be on the third or fourth pages after a couple of hours, even a couple of days. So again, it's free, yes, but then if you want to subscribe more in terms of getting some sponsorship for your ad, there's a payment to that.
Well, it looks like we have a lot of people commenting on this. So I guess I think it's free and it's not free, depending on what is probably
yes.
Probably true. But I wonder if in the chat function, it looks like a lot of people have used Indeed. Maybe they could comment on whether they found it useful or whether there's some other tool that they find useful. You also mentioned ZipRecruiter as another option there. The other question that came up a lot so I'm anticipating the questions that might come in now, but we had some in advance. The other one that came up a lot is, do I post my salary? Now, I noticed in our ad we didn't post the salary, so and still I'm not seeing a lot of that in ads. But do you have any advice for our business owners on that?
In terms of salary, it depends. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to answer that question, but I'll go first. And it depends. And sometimes you want to be transparent as an organization to post the salary. It helps in terms of attraction for the right candidate to apply. You know, the candidate applying knows about the salary, but it's an option that's given. A lot of time I see organization adding in terms of what's the compensation range, kind of a range, the salary range that they would add in the ad. So something that will help in terms of targeting. A lot of people will look at the salary ad and apply for the job. So it just helped to boost your ad and get the right candidate for your ads.
Okay. The other piece of advice I would offer to everyone on this, oh, and I see Jean-Marc is up too, so he might have some advice as well, but is if you hate doing this, I honestly, like, it's my least favorite thing to do in my job is hire. I hate hiring people, and I need people on the team, right? So I lean on those that I know who are good at this, and I know depending on the size of your organization, that could be a challenge, but you know, even if it's a partner or a friend who can help you with this, who's good at this, because some people absolutely love it. I can't figure that out, but they love doing this kind of stuff. And so good example of that is Simone, who I work closely with. He got really creative with this, and he came up with a nice visual using Canva, you mentioned, which is another free digital tool. But if that's not your thing and you're not good at that, ask one of your employees to help you, or someone who might love it. And then you don't have to do that painful part of it if it feels painful for you. Jean-Marc, did you want to add a comment?
Yeah, on the salary question, if you don't feel comfortable posting the salary, a lot of the time, what you can do as well is you can be transparent on your first call and try to sell the other aspect, the culture, the perks, because sometimes as well you could lose the candidate by posting the salary on the job post. But once they call and they hear what you're offering, as far as the culture, the other perks that you're offering, you can actually keep them. So just a little point that I wanted to add.
Yeah, there's a little bit of art and science in that, right? Stephanie made the point that it can save a lot of time, because it's awful when you post and you get candidates and then their expectations for pay are just way outside of what you can do. So, you know, that's kind of a little bit of decision. I'm going to move us on to interviewing best practices. But one of the takeaways on this, I think, is try and make it fun, humor, promote the non-wage things as well, because employees, go back to that first cartoon, they're looking for culture as well as just money. So that's good news for small business, because small business can be great at that. So use that to your advantage. And then there is a need for speed in this next step, between when you post. In the old days, you'd post and then kind of, oh, where are those job applicants? Did they come in? And, you know, I'll take my time. There is now a need for speed. So that's a second good takeaway. And
I would like to add something, Laura, just on this, since we're moving to the next slide, on different ideas to recruit. And I know a lot of organizations are doing virtual, and we've tried it as well at CFIB, kind of do a Facebook Live, and where we get, you know, you can actually promote that event. It's kind of an open house, but it's an open house live on Facebook, where you get candidates or prospective candidates to come and then ask questions about the position, and you can tell a little bit about the organization and the perks that you have at the organization, the benefits you provide to your employees, what the job entails. It just helps a lot of, especially in this very competitive market, to attract a different kind of pool of candidates as well. So it could be on Instagram, could be on Facebook Live, where you can get to candidates come in and join this event and know about the organization, know about the jobs you're recruiting for.
Yeah, that's right. And we've talked about in this finding your candidates some of the electronic means, but also, you know, sometimes that's not where your potential candidates are. So if you're willing to do seniors who can work part-time, you might go to the community center where they are and be posting something a little bit more like on a bulletin board. And often it's both. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful. Again, high school students, my daughter just got a job, and it was her guidance counselor that told her that a local deli was looking for some help, and organized, you know, and that she went and did the interview with a couple of friends too. So you have to really think differently. I love, there was a question that just came in actually about whether you let's see, what was it? Sorry, now I've lost it because they're, but it basically has to do with, when candidates come in person, should you prioritize that? I think In the past, you might have had the luxury of that. Now there is a need for speed. It's a little bit more like looking for a house. So if someone comes in and they look good, interview them as quickly as you can. And if you think they're good, you know, making the offer, it's a little bit more like that kind of thing, rather than saying, okay, I'm going to wait for everything and then compare them and contrast and pick the best one in the pile. Again, every situation is a little bit different, but I think if you're struggling to find people, that need for speed is really important. Okay, Jocelyn, I think I'm going back over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Actually, we're going to bring Trisha up, and she's going to talk to us about some interviews. Some of this is a little bit more traditional, like Midori had spoken about the live chats and things, but this is some great tips to get you started.
Thanks so much, Jocelyn. So yes, once your applications start coming in, you do want to act quickly. The market has changed and we no longer have weeks to let the resumes pile up. So before your interviews, you want to sort through the applications and resumes. You want to prepare your interview questions and schedule your interviews. So for those in attendance today, we have a CFIB interview question and candidate evaluation that we can share with you to help in this process. In some cases, it is helpful to have someone do the interviews with you, whether it's a store manager or another employee that might work closely with the new hire. This could actually be a really great opportunity for growth for them. During the interview, you want to sell your company to the candidate and make sure that you're sharing the competitive advantages. Make the candidates feel comfortable and encourage them to ask you questions. Remember, if this is someone's first job interview, they may be very nervous as well. One of the pre-webinar questions that we got was, how do you screen for common sense? That's a really great question. I love that. The way that you can screen is to see if someone can problem solve the best is to ask behavioral questions, such as, what would you do at work when there's no customers? And how would you handle a really upset customer that was clearly in the wrong? So these are examples of behavioral questions, and they can give you a really good idea of how an employee might handle a certain situation or how they might interact with others within the business. And just a heads up, don't inadvertently ask any discriminatory questions. So for example, it might seem really friendly to ask, do you have children at home? But if you do that and you don't hire the applicant, they could potentially lodge a complaint that you didn't hire them based on the human rights ground of family status. So just remember, once you learn something, you can't unlearn it.
Yeah, thank you, Trisha. That's really good. And that's one of the things you do have to be aware of with the human rights consideration, just making sure that you're not inadvertently putting yourself in a corner. We're going to actually move on to making the job offer. A couple considerations. Once you've successfully gone through the interview process, before you finalize the offer, you might actually be wondering whether or not you should be doing background checks. And depending on the position you're hiring for, you may want to do a background check, but typically this is something you should only really do if there's a bona fide occupational requirement. So for example, if someone's working with vulnerable population, you're probably going to want to do a criminal background check. If someone's working in finance, you're probably going to want to do a credit check. But otherwise, you might not want to spend too much time between spending the time you decide who you want to hire and getting the contract signed. In regards to references, we were talking about this the other day, and most people are only going to give you names of people that are going to tell you they're wonderful. So it could possibly be a step that you could skip, especially if you're hiring someone who is young or it's one of their first jobs, like a high school student. And we're also going to talk a little bit about perks and pay. And I'm actually going to ask Midori to pop back up because there is obviously salary is important, but it's not the only factor that's important to candidates right now. So Midori, do you want to talk about what you've been finding in this market?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jocelyn. So a lot of time I do make a lot of verbal offers and offers to employees, and it's very important to make the candidate know and understand, where you're coming from in terms of a compensation package. So the compensation package is not only the salary that you actually pay the employee, it also comprises of benefits that you actually give to the employees. If you're contributing to the group RSP or the other things that you have at the organization that help the employees, or you adding as well in terms of monetary value in that, something that you want also to bring that forward. If you're paying for their metro passes or a free parking that you're actually providing to them, something that you would like to mention. It's all encompasses in the compensation package. And then a vacation is sometimes a lot of employees talk about, we think it's with the job, but again, to mention about that, and also talk about what's about if 5 years from now your vacation is going to increase. Talk about that, make them know that the package, the job is not about just the salary only in terms of compensation. It also entails different perks that's provided. And I also like to mention in terms of we at CFIB do a lot of training with our employees, and do mention about the investment that you would be doing in terms of the training, their orientation, and talk to them about if there's something that you would like to do depending on the person that's coming in. If it's a skilled worker, you probably paying, for instance, for the membership in that they are affiliated to for the job that they have, mentioning about that, how you would be supporting them across in terms. So when the candidate view that, the prospective new hire will say, well, I'm just not getting that, I'm getting other perks as well available. And if you want to mention it's a restaurant that you want to mention about the free pizzas that you have every Friday, or something that that you do with the summer events that you do for your employees, or the days that you have a couple of hours that you give off to the employees for the long weekend. Do mention that it all encompasses in the compensation package.
Yeah, thank you. And something that we thought about too is if you have a downtown office, a Metro Pass, or it could also be really helpful. And Laura, you popped up. I think it might be about the references. There's a lot of comments about references.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should clarify again, there's art and science to this. If you're looking for someone to help you in your deli, and again, call references if you have the time to do it, absolutely is a best practice. Be thoughtful about what questions you ask though, because if someone's giving references, they're often like, you have to kind of really listen carefully to what they're saying. Sometimes they're less valuable, other times they're great. But of course, if you have time, call those references. And if it's a skilled job, that's usually an absolute that you would do that. But for those entry level high school jobs, sometimes you get a good feel in the interview.
And there may be a big difference between verifying previous information or verifying resume information versus getting a character reference, from my, family friend of 20 years. So I think that could be a big difference too.
But when you're doing those reference calls, just be thoughtful about what questions, because they've given you're trying to get below. Is there anything they would need help with, for example, is a good question, because then it's like, or what would they need help with, even better, so that they, or where could I support them in, to give you that flavor of where are the weaknesses and the strengths.
Good point.
But there were also a couple of questions just while I'm up, before we get too much further in there. There was also a bunch of questions on just the asking the right questions in the interview. So is there anything that could affect your ability to make it to work, like transportation? There was a question on whether that would be a good question. Does your family support your decision to apply? Those kinds of questions that could be. So any advice on those ones? Jean-Marc, I think you had said that for minors, I mean, some of these questions are like, if you're hiring high school students, like it's, can you make the shifts work might be better. Is there anything that would get in your way of making the shifts work? I don't know. How do you guys pose these questions? What advice do you give?
I mean, it's definitely important if you're going to hire a minor to have permission, to make sure that they have permission from their parents. As far as the reference, the reference, Jocelyn is right. If somebody doesn't have any professional experience, it's kind of hard to go and make a call for a reference. So in those kind of situations, maybe that's something that you would like to skip. But like I said, it's an art and science, so it really depends on the situation.
I also want to make sure we cover the termination clause, because I know we got a lot of questions about that. So I'll turn it back over to you and get back to One final thing, guys, if you've got questions that you want our panelists to answer, put them in the Q&A. It's just easier for us to track those. If you're talking to each other, the chat is great. And we're trying to track the questions there, but they whiz by pretty quickly. So if you want them for the panelists, just put them in the Q&A. Thanks.
No problem. I did see someone ask where to, if you don't know what the salary range is, what can you do? Where can you go to find that? Just to let you know, in terms of pay range, the Canada Job Bank does have a wages page, and that's a federal government tool that lists positions by national occupational code, and it gives you the low, median, and high wages for every province, and sometimes it even breaks it down by city in the country. So if you're really not sure where to start, that could be a good little tool. But one of the most important parts about the employment relationship is the contract, and we're actually going to show you. CFIB has an employment contract. We call it the letter of offer / employment contract. We're going to show you what this looks like. It's part of the package we're going to give you with the webinar. I wanted to show you this one because these templates are Word documents, and the reason that is so that you can easily remove things or add things to meet your specific needs. There's a lot of information in this particular template. It includes everything from compensation, hours, vacation, sick time. So you can add as much detail as you want. If the position becomes a little bit more skilled, obviously there's more. Anything that's gray in our templates is where you fill in the blanks. Anything that's blue is instructions or tips, and you can delete it once you've filled it in. A lot of you asked about, should there be a termination agreement in the employment contract? And although it feels a little counterintuitive to talk about termination during the hiring process, 100% this may be the most important part of the employment contract. And you can see in our own template, the termination talk in the contract almost takes up the entire last page. It gives you, it'll lay out the information for various reasons, whether it's a short-term layoff, whether it's for cause, not for cause, whether it's within the probationary period. So if you are looking for a contract that has that sort of information, we did make sure that this was prepared professionally. Do keep in mind that all contracts are legally binding contracts. And whenever we have a legally binding document, if you want to have that reviewed by a lawyer, we certainly can recommend that. So we're going to provide this for you as part of the webinar package as well. And I hope that's very helpful to you. But now that we've got our employee, hopefully, we are going to bring Tricia back up to talk a little bit about onboarding.
Yes, thanks again, Jocelyn. So as Jocelyn previously mentioned, retention starts upon hiring. So ensuring a positive start to the employment relationship at orientation is essential. In the first few days, you want to make the employee feel welcome, comfortable in their new environment and with their coworkers. Introduce them to the management, colleagues, and if applicable, any customers that come in. Ensure that they know about the business they're working for by reviewing goals and objectives, reporting structure, company policies, and their job responsibilities. Orientation of the new employee is also important to establish clear standards and expectations, ensure consistent treatment of all employees, create consistent management, and highlight policies. And part of the onboarding is getting the paperwork right. So there is some payroll paperwork and health and safety training that should be done. Also, a great tip you may want to implement is that the new hire has a buddy. So as a business owner, of course, you wear many hats and you're very busy. So making sure that the new hire has someone they can go to when you're not available is extremely helpful. And towards the end of the first week, just ensure that you have like a little feedback meeting with the employee. Starting the feedback loop at the start of the relationship will ease communication down the road. It's always good to keep the lines of communication open with the new employee. And during the feedback meeting, to ensure that you're both in sync, you should ask questions like, what surprised you? What was the most interesting thing about our business that you've learned this week? Did you interact with a client? And if so, how did it go? And what do you need to learn next? So again, keeping those lines of communication open will set the groundwork for a strong employment relationship. And I'll put it back over to Jocelyn.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just snooping in the questions there. Someone had asked for the link for the Canada Job Wages post, so I did put that in the chat. If you guys are looking for that, it's now in there. And also someone was asking for where could we find a copy of this employment contract that we just shown. We're going to send it to all of the registrants of the webinar when we send the recording out, which is usually tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about retention.
Jocelyn, these tools, just while you're saying that, I thought we should say these tools are also available in the member portal, right? So these webinars are exclusive to CFIB members. So you're all members of CFIB, and you can go into the member portal, part of our website that's exclusive to you, and there's a library that has all of our templates, and we've got great templates, not just on hiring and the stuff we're talking about today, but I encourage everyone to check it out. And if you struggle with it, we'll put our phone number up on the last slide, and you can give us a call and we'll help walk you through it.
We just had a great question. Is there a difference between an employment contract and a handbook? There is, and the employment contract is really unique to the one person that you're hiring, whereas the employee handbook is kind of the guidelines for everyone, all of the employees across the organization. We actually have a full employee handbook template, a fill in the blank employee handbook template on the member portal. So that might be something that you might want to check out as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about retention. This is, I mean, you guys know the cost of hiring, orientation, training, it can really pile up, and you never want to have to fill the same position 2 or 3 times in 1 year. It's very frustrating. It can impact productivity and team morale. And we've already talked a little bit about how offering more wages and benefits are a good incentive, but it's not always possible. You might not have more to give. So there's other things employees value. We've mentioned some of them before. Don't underestimate alternative rewards. Paid time off is very popular. You can offer that in your slower times. You can offer employee family get-togethers. It actually goes a long way. And if, like you said, if you have that hungry college student, maybe a free meal every shift or a Metro Pass is going to be the thing. But really, if you know your team and you continue to pay attention as that team grows and changes over the years, you're going to be able to keep some of your best employees and attract strong applicants. And the main thing that employees are looking for, and I think Madhuri had already reiterated this, is a workplace where people can be respected and where they can grow. And we found that workplaces that have really consistent and clear, transparent expectations will help employees want to stay and have them involved in decision making the best possible, as much as you can. Another important element of work right now is wellness, and CFIB offers a respectful workplace statement and a wellness policy in our member portal. And I'm actually happy to plug that we're developing additional wellness tools that are going to be launched early in June in our member portal. So we hope that you keep your eyes open for those. And as I mentioned before, growth and learning is another great way to attract and retain employees. So I have 2 different tools that I can highlight for you today. They are free. First up is ViewBiz. ViewBiz is CFIB's partner that offers online learning courses to all of our members, and that's also available to your employees. We have 50 free ViewBiz online courses, and there's courses on things like health and safety, compliance, management, and customer relations. There's actually quite a few in there. So that's something you could get your staff to take. There's also 4 certificate programs that's recognized by Athabasca University at a discounted price. They can be in small business management, human resources, health and safety, and sales and marketing. So these are the kinds of things that you can do to encourage personal growth and knowledge of your employees. And Jean-Marc and I were talking the other day, and we were saying, like, if you start as a cashier and you know that with hard work and you know that by taking courses and growth, someday there may be an opportunity to be the manager of the store. Those are the kinds of incentives that help people want to stay with you in the long run. We also recently became aware of a program called Grow with Google. So this program offers career certificates that help support small businesses upskill their current digital skills for their staff. So there's career certificates in data analytics, project management, IT support, digital marketing, and e-commerce. This might be a good opportunity. Instead of hiring fresh, take someone who has an interest in one of these areas and skill them up and promote them from within. So before we move on, I'm actually going to bring Tricia back up because we've been talking a lot about getting the employees on board, but there is also an important reminder about the compliance piece that has to be done when bringing new staff.
Yes, thanks again, Jocelyn. So yeah, each province in Canada, they have varying requirements for your business to be in compliance with all the government regulations. So that's based on the size and industry of the business. So there's occupational health and safety, workers' compensation, and more. Our business advisors have compiled checklists for each province and are more than happy to provide them to you, as well as answer any specific questions related to compliance that you might have. So just give us a call or email us for your copy. And as well, a few of you have asked if there's any support in hiring from the government. That's the next slide. And the government support, so it does exist, but generally it's targeted to pockets of need, both provincially and federally. So when a member calls us in business resources, we try to be very transparent and explain that the boxes that are open can be quite narrow. Despite that, you may want to check out a tool that's offered through the federal government called Business Benefits Finder. So you answer a few questions about your business model and it generates funding opportunities based on your answers. And there are regional development agencies that can offer assistance at a regional level that you may want to check out as well. And finally, your province may also have some support. For example, I'm in New Brunswick, and here we have a website called Working NB that helps connect employers to employees looking for work. So we want to make it clear, these programs are there, but again, they're very, very targeted. With that said, our members have had success with a couple. So here are two that our members generally have found success with. So the Canada Digital Adoption Program is another federal tool which offers support in helping businesses go digital by growing your business online. So businesses can leverage the help of talented post-secondary students and recent graduates through subsidized work placements. Where this isn't specifically a hiring grant, you can still get funding to bring you online, and they provide all the manpower for you through their digital advisors. And the Canada Summer Job Program is also fairly popular with our members. It provides wage subsidies to employers with 50 or fewer full-time employees to create quality summer work experience for young people aged 15 to 30. But keep in mind, applications open in January to start interviewing and hiring in April and May. And we do send reminders to our members, but the window is very small. And if you're looking for any more information about government support, to save time, give us a call in Business Resources, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through that process.
Yeah, thank you, Tricia. Those are some popular programs, but there are others out there, like she mentioned, and they are usually pretty specific. So if you have any questions, please just give us a call. Many of you also asked about the hiring of foreign workers, and we do have a little bit of information about some of the changes to the temporary foreign workers program. If we could, there we go. I'm not going to go into the too much, like Laura had said, we're not going to go into the trees on this. It could be its entire own webinar. The main changes to the temporary foreign worker program is there's no longer a limit on the number of positions that are available to seasonal industries like fishing and agriculture. The labor market impact assessments are now valid for 18 months instead of 9 months. And most employers can have up to 20% of their workforce's low-wage positions filled by temporary foreign workers. There is 7 different industries that the government raised the cap from 20 to 30% for 1 year, and they are listed there on the screen. But the reality is this is a very complex program, and it's a very lengthy in time program as well. So if you want to discuss this, the business advisors are well equipped to give you a lot more information and try to narrow it down to what you need specifically. So we do recommend that you have a one-on-one conversation about that. got questions about hiring Ukrainian refugees. Open work permits, which will allow them to work for any employer in Canada for up to 3 years. And just waiting for my internet to come back. There we go. So there is a job bank specifically for Ukrainians. What you would do is you go into the Canada Job Bank, the regular, normal Canada Job Bank. You create yourself an employee profile. Then you create a job posting, save it as a draft, and you submit a form that tells the job bank that you specifically want that position to be filled by someone from Ukraine. Now, there are Ukrainian refugees already in Canada, and there are still Ukrainians in Ukraine. So it just depends on where they are in the process, whether they're here or whether they're there. But I will also give you the caveat to say that if you post a job on this job bank, it is going to be visible to all Canadians and all applicants across the country. So if you do want more information about that, again, we do have that for through our advisors. Laura, I think we're going to bring you up to kind of go over some of the top tips and just review some of the things that we covered during this webinar.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks, Jocelyn. And we're going to then get to some of your questions, but some of the top tips, think like the people you're trying to hire. So if you're hiring high school students or university students, try to think like them. And if you're not in that mindset yourself, just borrow that expertise from others. So be quick, be transparent. That's another good tip. Tell everyone, like if you're hiring, do it multiple different channels. Like you can post on, if you're online, you can use those channels, Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever you're doing there. But you can also put a sign up in your window if you have a street facing business. So, and tell all your friends and think outside the box with respect to that. So, you know, if you're looking for entry level and you're okay with high school students, maybe pick up the phone and call the guidance counselor or ask if you can put something on the bulletin board there. So there's all kinds of different ideas there, but just think outside the box. Tell everyone that you're hiring. Offer growth and learning opportunities. That's really important. I would say just even creating context for the people you're hiring and being clear about your communication is really important from the time they come in. If you've got an anxious high school student sitting across from you, you know, try and help them by saying, okay, I understand this is your first time probably applying for a job, or is this your first time? Okay, it's your first time. Let me take a second to make them feel comfortable. If you do end up hiring them, that first impression, there's going to create a little bit of loyalty, puts a little bit of loyalty in the bank, right? So that really clear communication. And that actually applies whatever level you're, what you're talking about. And use, we've got tons of great tools to save you time and frustration. I'm going to go to the next slide. I really want to get to some questions, so I'm going to speed up here a little bit. We've got a few things happening that you should know about. Our AGM, which is virtual, which means that anyone can join us easily from across the country. You have to sit through a little bit of, you know, the boring financial stuff and other AGM materials, but then we do have a really great panel on what's happening across Canada with respect to our advocacy and our BR that's kind of similar to our webinars. And then we've got a couple of webinars coming up, one on managing debt and collections and one with our chief economist on the economic outlook, and he's great. And so that's one not to miss. I think we have one more thing we quickly have to go through, and that is just we like to give you just the latest on what's happening. And Canada Post has a competition. Again, this is the kind of thing we thought we'd throw it up because they support our Small Business Everyday campaign. And anytime there's something where there might be some money, this is something you could put to one of your staff if they're interested in this kind of thing. And I think we've looked at it, doesn't look too hard to apply. So if you're interested in that, there it is. And now the part I really want to get to, questions. So I think we've got about 10 minutes left for some questions. And I see we've got, I'm going to pull Jean-Marc up. I'm going to pull Jocelyn and Midori and Trisha, if you want to put on your screen as well, and we'll take your questions. There was one that Kathy asked in regards to references, I guess Kathy asked about absenteeism when she was doing the references, and all of the references said, and this is what I was kind of warning about, all of the references are like, oh yeah, they're great. So remember, your candidate has selected these references to give you, to give them a review. So for the references to then say anything more negative, that you're going to have to push a little to get that, and you're going to have to be creative about that. So person calling in sick a lot. Jean-Marc, you said you wanted to answer this one live, so I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it goes with what Jocelyn said, the tip that she said as far as going fast, but also not necessarily doing the reference, because a lot of the time, if you do your homework as far as like asking the right question to the employee, it's probably best for you to start the employee first, use a probationary period to evaluate the employee, and then, you know, make a decision on whether or not you want to continue with them long term. You have a 3-month probationary period in most provinces. Make the most of it, because a lot of the time past employers don't necessarily want to give the reference by fear of reprisal, because a desperate employee can easily open a claim against a past employer. So if they had a poor relationship, you can best believe that the employer does not want to speak on it. So that's also why it's tough to get those references.
Yeah, I think references can be a useful tool, but not leaning on them exclusively is really important. So you're going to look to doing a good job in the interview, your references, and then that 3-month probation period. Those are probably your 3 legs of the stool in terms of evaluating whether you're going to get a good fit. And so I'm going to stick with another question that gets at this whole how do you ask questions idea. Nicole's asking, what would be a good way to find out if they're comfortable with upselling without asking in a way where they can just lie to get the job? And Nicole, this is such a great question, because the question you don't want to ask is, are you comfortable upselling? Like, put yourself in the candidate's shoes. You're not going to say no to that, right? Like you're going to, and this applies to any question. So you think about what skill is it that you need your applicant to have, your employee to have, and then work backwards from there. And there are 2 ways you can do this. You can say, can you tell me about a time when is a great way to, and then something that would relate to their ability to do this. Or you can give them a scenario. So Nicole, you could, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but you know, let's say you're in a hair salon and you say, how would you handle a situation where someone's just had a great cut and blow dry, and you know we have the perfect shampoo for them, but they're not asking for it? You know, and then you can get a sense. And what you're listening for in those, when people answer that kind of question, you're not listening for a specific response. You're paying attention to how is their mind working and how do they sound? Like, do they sound like they really want to learn and they're engaged, they're not sure, they don't have the right answer, but you think you could work with them? So that's what you're listening for in those questions. Second great tip I'm going to give on asking questions, because I hate interviewing, so I've had to spend a lot of time trying to get good at it, is ask the second question. So if you're saying, can you tell me about a time when you showed good initiative? Let's say they say, well, I think this is my time. Ask them a second question about that. If you're worried about, I'm not sure, are they making this up, or is this something? Ask them a second question like, oh, you know, I hire a lot of researchers. So your thesis was on international trade. Can you tell me a little bit about what your key result was? And what I'm listening for is not the key result, how well they communicate the key result. Do I understand it? Could they talk about that in a legislative meeting? So Jean-Marc, you had also wanted to say something about that one. So I want to just, the question of, you know, are they comfortable upselling was the original question that led to that little.
Well, I think you've kind of given away the answer. I wouldn't. The only thing I would add is the situation. You know, make sure when somebody gives you a broad answer, ask them to give you an example based on the actual situation that you're trying to, like, you know, if you're trying to see how they will think in those moments or act in those moments, ask them to give them an example. If they don't have any professional example, ask them to give them an academic example in school. but you're just trying to see their critical thinking and how they will act in those moments. I think that's really what you need. Midori has a lot of experience with salespeople, I know.
A quick tip on that, I usually use kind of it's called a STAR approach, it's STAR. So you look at a situation, you look at what the task that they had to do and what action they took, as well as what the result was there. So this is what you would gauge from the answer to see if they've gone through the whole process of looking at the situation and also the task that they've done, action they took, and the result that they actually got at the end.
Yeah. So we'll take a couple more questions. So we might skate just a couple of moments over time, just because there's so many great questions. And then obviously if people have to drop off, they have to drop off, and we're going to send you the webinar anyway. So that's great advice. I want to get to the question, what about onboarding when they haven't provided an appointment letter? After a year, we realize, like, you realize you skipped some stuff, like maybe they don't have a job description and they don't have a letter. What do you do then? Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. So you can introduce a new workplace policy or an employment contract any point along the journey, but understanding that, like I said, an employment contract is a legally binding agreement. Often when we want to introduce a new something like that, an agreement, there is a legal term called consideration.
Oops, I think Jocelyn's.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know.
It's all right. Keep going.
No, I was going to say, so the term is consideration, and what you're doing is you're offering consideration for signing the new contract. So maybe that's a small raise, maybe that's an extra week's vacation, but that's just a legal way to make it easier for that person to accept the new agreement without feeling the fear of what do we call it, constructive dismissal. So that's how I would do it. I would say, hey, I got this contract and we're going to give you a small raise. Let's sign this deal. So
yeah. Okay, so I am going to, I know we have a lot of, we've got a poll that we want to do because this webinar was quite popular. So we want to make sure that if it would be useful to have deeper dives. So why don't we do that poll while we take any last questions or comments. And maybe what I'll do is go to each of the panelists and ask you if there's a question that you wanted to answer, and then your final comments so that we can stay reasonably on time. And Trisha, I'll start with you.
No question specifically that I wanted to answer. I just wanted to thank everybody on the panel and also all of our attendees for coming and attending. And this was a really fun topic to chat about with everybody.
Jocelyn?
I just wanted to say thank you to Jean-Marc, Andrea, and Sean from BR, who's in the background answering questions. My favorite thing about this webinar was that it was almost more of a conversation than us telling you. So thank you for everyone who participated, and we look forward to seeing you next month on our next webinar.
Jean-Marc.
Yeah, sorry, I am not looking away. I'm not distracted. I'm just trying to.
I see you're typing an answer to Anne about contracts necessary for all types of businesses, but you might want to put that to the audience.
Yeah, actually, so it's a pleasure, always a pleasure to do these webinars, and you know, and we have those discussions. We also learn from members in the chat of things that they've been doing to help recruiting. So you know, those are rich exchanges, and we love doing those webinars. And we're doing one in French. If there is any francophones in the audience, we're doing one in French in the weeks ahead. So thank you again for your presence and your participation to this webinar.
And we have a very simple contract, Anne, is the question that I think Jean-Marc is answering right now. We have a very simple one. Probably best to have one even for, you know, for any kind of job, but we make it easy and simple and approachable, and one you could just literally like plug your business name into. So to answer that one. Okay, Midori, I'm going to you and then I'll take us home.
Sure. Well, thanks, Laura. Well, there was a question from Bruce. I just want to answer that. It talked about headhunting it was about staffing agencies, something that I do as well. So kind of sharing the idea. It's if you have a niche skill or something you're looking for, the candidate you're looking for, you're not finding, your efforts are not bringing that. staffing agencies and headhunting, they are really good source as well if you're looking to fill a position as soon as possible. So while it was a great sharing some of the ideas with members, it's a pleasure to be here.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll just wind us up by saying it looks like there's some appetite for some additional webinars on this, so we'll work on that. And I would say, again, the tips that we've heard, like I know we had a tip slide there, but it's the need for speed, like do things faster than you thought, the need for fun, making things fun and interesting, and thinking like your audience, what would they enjoy, and the need for context, communication, and clarity. And if you can remember those three things, then that'll help you a lot. And also get help. If this is something you hate, get someone to, I'm talking about your, think outside the box with in terms of getting help, because some people love this stuff. But we know it's a challenging environment out there. You guys are doing a great job, and feel free to call us if there was anything we didn't get to. I think our live answer rate, which is something that we track very closely because we really want to be approachable and answer the phone. I think we're taking about 80% right now live, Jocelyn. So chances are good shot at getting someone live. Of course, if we don't get you live, you can leave a message, and we are 100%, I think, meeting our 24-hour turnaround time for calls. So if we don't get you live, you can leave a message and we'll get back to you. So, and we always love talking to you. So thank you very much. And we will see you in the next webinar, whenever that may be, whenever you may join us next. Thanks so much, everyone.